Please subscribe, like, and share. It has been through some changes, big improvements on the engine department, and of course the chassis has been redone, lighted up, and I will go forward from here and share some of the changes that was done, if it will allow me, because I think there's a limit on how many times this computer can take so many segments of spliced together film of this beautiful race car. Anyway, here it is, and we'll go from there and enjoy. This was the first version of this car after it's been changed from a mild street car to this NA Terror. It is green at that time. It's actually dark green. It's very mean looking, as you can see here. I don't know if the color shows. It's very clean, beautiful bodywork, and the car was fast, but some issues in regards to who controls the car, ownership. There's some dispute with that, and this one didn't last too long, and it changed configuration to what you will see next. Another angle of this beautiful car. This from the driver's side, and you can see the nice wheel layout, how it's tucked in and fills up the fender wells, the front runners. Car was gorgeous. And continue on. As you can see, now the car became white. Here it went, and got things looking up. And here's the car in Las Vegas, and in Irwindale, chassis is looking good. There were issues with getting it right, and fortunately Big Ed, who was one of the premier chassis guys, got involved with this car. Unfortunately, he passed away soon thereafter, and but he gave us a pretty good indication of what this car can do, and here we are. It's sad, but it turned to gold after this incident here. All right, and everything was cleared out, so now we have the car. Here's the engine combination when it became white. Before that, green. Single dominator on a motorsport, highly modified motorsport intake, as you can see right there. Still a single dominator 1050, modified by C&J Engineering out there in Los Angeles. Guys did an excellent effort on that doggone carburetor. Responded great. Okay, so 60 foot was impressive, considering the car was heavy at 3,080 pounds. Here's another picture of the engine on the front, right front, and here we are left front. Here's the Blue Thunder head with the plate installed. By the time I cut, I'll be right up here. No welding on top of the head is required. And remember, and look how high that is from the stock. Stock port location is right about down here. Now with the plate, I'm barely covering the bottom of the port, and that's what it needed to be done. Now here's a side shot. You see two plates, one in line up with the valve cover rail, and the one slightly above it. That allows me to raise the port big time. And here is the rough casting when I had it dummied up. Look at the plate. Okay, if you look at the end of the valve cover, pretty much that's where it's at. Because now the plate, the inside port plate became part of the valve cover rail. Okay, because I'm thin, very thin on the very top of the port there. Like I said, no welding required. Here it is on the flow bench, rough. This is how much I filled it up to see where my low part of the port would be. Remember, this has already been ported. by me before. Okay, and now you're looking at, by the time I'm done, about 420 CFM. Right about there. That's where I'm gonna be. This is just moving the port up without the plate. Now there's the plate. Glued in, and there it is. I blurred the intake port configuration. Now here's the difference between a Vortex Neo that's flowing about 435 and a Blue Thunder head, which is really nothing but a glorified Cleveland head with small chambers. If you notice, this is a little higher now than the Vortex head. The reason the Vortex heads flowed a little bit more because he has a straighter port to the intake valve. The Blue Thunder kind of turned a little bit. It turned to the left in order to get to the valve. This one's more straight through. Just something to think about. Oh, there you go, close up. Okay. I did this. It's more rounded here. I was trying to get as much port volume as I can for the RPMs we're going to turn. But if you notice the port floor on the Vortex Neo, this is slightly higher. Okay. And like I said, the flow difference is this has a little bit of turn to it, which tells me it has a little bit more swirl, but this is more of a straightforward to the valve. By the time you see the springs offset to one side, here it's straight out. Okay, more like straight through to the port, hardly any turn. That's where you pick up an extra 10-15 CF.
After you see those pictures highlighted on this video, I'll try to explain the purpose and how that modification works as far as intake flow is concerned, and how it distributes better towards the combustion chamber by putting this, basically I call that a W floor, all right, because it's shaped like a W, having that center. And that's how Gage Motorsports, Max Gregorich and myself named that modification. And here we go. Let's talk about this. We're looking at this video here, and a tunnel ram in red, that's the flow, the predominant flow, and a standard manifold like a Victor Jr. cast manifolds. This is the port angle. Actually, it's a little bit lower than that, but for this purpose, this is what we're going to stick with. Now, when you're looking at flow at high RPM, it wants to straighten out. That's why when you look at the sheet metal manifolds or the tunnel rams, they're almost standing straight up from the port angle. And you wonder, wow, this is more straight? Correct. A tunnel ram, sheet metal intake, comes in at a much higher angle. And the reason for that is at high RPM, flow don't want to bend. It wants to run on a straight line. And when it does that, this is the scenario that you're in front of you, okay? What they do this is to help have a, what they call a line of sight that you can see straight through the valve, the perimeter of the valve. That's why you look at from here, you eyeball it down, and you see there's not much obstruction or anything on the way, bends, turns, or whatever. That's what you call line of sight, and that's how a sheet metal intake actually functions. Whereas here, the standard manifold, you're looking at it from this angle, all right? You don't see the whole perimeter of the valve, and that's where it doesn't flow. Like they say, the best foolproof way, just keep it simple, is line of sight. The more you can see less obstruction inside a port, the better it'll flow. To a certain extent, there's a point of diminishing returns. So this line of sight goes straight to the valve. We're looking at it this way, and this one here is off to the lower angle, and you're not going to see it as much. Anyway, so here we go. Consequently, at a high port angle, most of the heavy air and the fuel starts to end up on the floor. And when you see this here, there's an accumulation of wetting around the floor of the port, especially when you look at it from the valve. You can see it right there. Now, with that said, when the fuel starts to accumulate there, it starts getting wet and wetting there, and they all end up right here. Let me look at this hinge. Just a second, guys. What's going to happen there is, let me put it this way. When they come in, right here, the heavy fuel particles, because there's velocity involved, will slam on the long side wall and right there, okay? And hardly anything happens here. The activity is minimal on this part of the port floor. Now, consequently, on a lower standard manifold, the same thing happens. It cannot take this drastic turn, and they also slam on the long side wall. So what is the purpose of this divot that I came up with? This guy here becomes an airfoil. I don't know if you can see that on the... It becomes an airfoil, and what happens is that you add this fin right here. Okay? When you add that fin, it's an airfoil that when airflow sees it, it slams in that fin and reintroduces whatever's sticking on the port floor, the fuel particles sticking on the port floor, and put it back on the airstream, because the middle of the port is really where a lot of the fuel is really going, okay, the mass flow. The edges here are basically, dead areas, dead zones. So, when the airfoil, or what we probably call a vortex generator, you notice that on some funny cars or race cars where at the end of the back windshield, they put this little airfoil or winglets on the very edge of the back windshield. What it does is the air has a tendency to grab it and pull down, so it puts more pressure on the whale tail or the tail, the tail of the engine, the car. All right, puts pressure on the tail, so you get downforce, and the vortex generator does that. Vortex generator here acts in the same manner. When the fuel particles come in and they see this, they slam into that airfoil and get reintroduced back into the airstream, so that when they get reintroduced back into it, instead of pushing down and dripping this way, right here, okay, they get reintroduced into the airstream and continue on to basically go like this, okay? That's what you're going to have. You're going to have more activity there and here on the short side. So the lean condition here, all right, because the air is sticking to the wall, it's not on the airstream, it's not mixing. That airfoil does exactly that. It reintroduces the air and the fuel together before it dumps into the valve. Now, I found this out years ago when I was here on this flow bench behind me, and what I did was, running at full lift, I placed a screwdriver just like this, and then I looked at my flow bench. I started picking up flow, and I was going, okay, what is going on here? And then I took it off, it dropped flow. I stuck it in here again, Because what actually happens, it's able to create a pressure area here and able to negotiate that short-term radius there. And if it does that with the air, of course, the fuel will also do the same thing. The fuel that's picked up off the floor because of this airfoil or this vortex generator gets reintroduced and is able to turn back instead of sticking to the wall and just basically, wetting around this area, and you're not going to like that at all. All right. So when you look at heads like that, you'll see wet spots right there on the short side. You don't want that because air that's not into the airstream sticking to the wall will not do anything good for combustion. You got to help them keep dispersed, keep them mixed, so that by the time you get into the combustion chamber, they're part of the equation. They will burn. But if they're sticking on the wall right there, not going to do much of anything. And also, at high RPM, everything tends to just go right there to the port roof. Therefore, with this airfoil, it brings it down and gives some activity right here with the air, not just the fuel. All right? So I hope that's clear with everybody else. Same thing with a standard port angle from a standard manifold. They come in and they see this thing, this vortex generator, and also does the same thing. Because when you look at, let's make a drawing of the back of a car. Okay? Excuse my drawing. What they usually do is put this vortex generators here. And when you look at the back of the car, there's like several of them, like that. All right? What that does is that with this vortex generator, or without it, the air usually, and then you have the tail here for downforce. Well, that's an ugly looking back of the car. Anyway, the air would usually go this way. And that tail didn't do anything from a downforce point of view. When you put the vortex generator, just like the fuel suspended, it does this. Okay? I hope that's clear. Could you see that? Oh yeah. So with a vortex generator, it comes down and hugs the back windshield a little bit to the deck and puts downforce on the tail of the car, if that's your purpose, to put a little bit of downforce on the back wheel. Vortex generator will act exactly that and put the airfoil down there and put pressure on the wing for downforce. Same thing here. When they come in, they see that vortex generator, or what I call a W4. They come in and able to negotiate that. It serves the same purpose as the vortex generator on the back windshield of a car. And I've always, in other previous parts of the video, I've always showed also that the short side radius is just like the back windshield of a car. Okay, that's why sometimes when you look at when it's raining, your front windshield is wet, your back windshield is dry. So that's why I look at a car with a back windshield wiper. That's totally useless. It's more like a decoration, because when you're running at speed and it's raining hard, you look at your back windshield, hardly any drop of water, but your front windshield is wet. This is also the back. This area here acts like the back windshield of a car. So if you put any kind of vortex generator there, it's going to help you out. Okay, I hope that's clear. And I don't know if the majority of the fuel is running out of this area. All right? That's what they consider, except if you have a bias to the left or to the right, then that would tend to to transfer the majority of the fuel column right there as well. These are lean areas. Okay, and this is the main focus of the fuel is in the middle. This Vortex generator depends on the way the port bends to the left or right. You gotta change that angle like I showed on this picture where I'm offset to one side on the first picture that I showed here on this video, because that's where the predominant superior flow exists, and you gotta put that splitter right in between that to get some activity there. Okay, I hope it's clear. Let's go to the next part.
Let's take a look at that port. I mentioned we changed the angle. When you look down this port, you're gonna see something similar to what you would see if you look down a Hemi head. You can almost see the entire seat. All right, can you see that? You can almost see the entire seat down here, which is very similar to a Hemi head, except that it's not a Hemi head, and you can run bigger valves without worrying about valves slamming into each other, which is a problem on Hemi heads. You're also looking at a completely different port shape. We call this our W port. So, because you're looking at a fin that's generally seen on the other side, on the roof rather than on the floor. 4 years of research and development is what brought us to this point. Now, how did that work out for us when we tested this head? Let me explain what we did. We took this head, or a head, and we brought it to a third-party dyno, third-party tester, third-party computer, and we ran 3 tests all in the same day, at the same temperature, at the same humidity, and we tested our head against 2 other heads that were done by head builders that you may or may not know. You know, I'm not going to mention their names because I happen to know who they are, and I like them, and they're wonderful guys, and they do a great job. But we did test against them, and on this particular day, on this particular dyno, and on this particular motor, one head made a little over 20 horse, another head made a little bit over 21 horse, and we put our head on. As a matter of fact, it was a similar head to this, the 3225, and we made a little over 26 horse. So there's a huge number there. And I don't want to say that everyone's going to get this, because it just depends on the cam, it depends on the day, it depends on all kinds of things. It's just that on that particular day, that's what we got. So I don't want phone calls going, you know, you're full of it, and yada, yada, yada. This was third-party numbers. I never publish my own numbers, just so I don't get into these, what do they call them, peeing contests with people that need to get a life somewhere, I guess.
Before we touch on the video some more, let me just show the piston on this small block Ford. This is what you're looking at, is the piston on Huey's engine. And it's a 16, roughly 16.3 with a 45cc chamber. And what's indicative of this is that you can see the big intake valve. It's a 224, was a 225. And the drawback with this combination is the ring land, the piston is really way down there, because it's necessary that the ring placement be lower because of the relief for the intake valve. Now you can say all you want, you can have all the big flow numbers. If you keep everything equal, and you have a row ring position, you will lose to the competition. Here's my perfect example to that. This is a Yates SC1 piston. Okay, small chamber, coated. That ring position is 150 from the top. And I think this one here, I'll measure later and post it here. And it's like 300, 320 or something like that. So about half the distance with the Yates. Given that you can have both identical flowing cylinder heads, Blue Thunder, Brody Snell, whatever, and they go up against an equal flowing Yates with the superior ring pack, guess what? He's gonna make more power by a whole bunch. So there's no contest. Ring position is very important. And let me put that in a proper perspective. Or we can look at this thing here. And look how much lower that ring pack is. Necessitated by the fact that there's a canted valve layout just like a big block Chevy on the small block Ford. And the Yates, no comparison. But the only time that ring pack is going to go down if it's for a turbo application where you need to put the ring pack a lot lower to make it survive the boost pressures, and you lose your crevice advantages, meaning the crevice losses will be just the same as this one here. And lastly, let me talk about ring gaps. Every time you get a ring from any manufacturer, they tell you this much clearance for the top ring, second ring, but they never ever tell you that if you put the rings, let's say on a high compressor like the 16-to-1 engine here, and let's say your ring gap that you chose between 23 to 26, that's just for example, 23 to 26. Now, you use that 23 to 26 here. This is such a small heat path between the deck and the ring, the top ring. The top ring here is going to run much hotter than this. Therefore, you might have to open this to 26 minimum. Okay, compared to 23 with that. Due to the fact that on the same exact application, because the ring will run so much hotter and the end gaps would butt together and you're going to wipe out your engine. Okay, so always take note. The ring position, this one requires a smaller ring gap for the same horsepower rating. This one requires a larger ring gap because of just that very situation.
What you're looking at are two Blue Thunder heads, both 3.6s, but the one on the left, this one here, is a casting that I feel was eventually for the 4.2 or 4.3. Okay, so I use a plate here to increase the port by roughly about 450, almost half an inch. Okay, or 475.475. This one here will go above 5. Okay, so here's another angle. You can see right there. After I put the plate, I machine off this valve cover rail. But this one here, when you machine the valve cover rail, you can really go real high to rival the SC1 or a Raceport SC1. So mind you, there are two Blue Thunder castings for the 3.6s. The one on the left is the one with the higher potential. Here we go, side to side. Both are untouched, but now you see how high I can go up. Even by the time I machine the valve cover rail, I can go up some more.
Okay, here's the bottom end. Look at all the holes that we had to cut through the counterweight to make it balance for the lighter connecting rod. And when you look through here, you can see It cut down counterweights, cut down throws. Of course, you had your lightning hose in the center. So you look at all the rods. Now you can see again how it's been narrowed down, and then the counterweight right there is cut down. You can see it big time right here. The counterweight's cut down big time. So that's there. The throws are cut. Okay, so this is a lot lighter now, way lighter. Yeah, that's going to be a hassle trying to adjust it with the spacer on there.
I'll pull the spacer up.
Yeah. I'll check it over. A spacer on the intake manifold, on the cylinder head. Go ahead and adjust it.
And everybody in Arizona, the dealers are going to triple their income in the next couple of years.
Everybody's going to be buying.
Exactly, because whatever you can put in the car trunk and sneak back over, everybody's going to be doing it.
You're going to buy everything from Vegas and bring it over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
But that's what they want. Getting ready to fire it up. Messing around with the computer. Play it on the intake port because it's raced up. Having that right there. Of course, to clear the valve train. Spacer on there. Gas tank, dual batteries, parachute, wheelie bars. Luke trying to check the computer. A wing. The car is beautiful, gold. Twin dominators.